These are some fifth grade students from Memorial School who are currently learning a lot about mythology. Long ago, Zeus ruled from the top of Mount Olympus. He was the lord of the sky, and it was his job to keep peace amongst his family, his brothers, sisters, and their children. His brother Hades was the lord of the underworld, the land of the dead. All souls, as soon as life ceased, crossed over the river Styx and entered the underworld. The gate was guarded by the three-headed dog Cerberus, and when you were in the land of the dead, you could never, never return. Now the sister of Hades and Zeus was Demeter. Demeter of the beautiful hair, and it was her job to make the crops grow. And in that blessed time, it was always summer. The seasons never changed, and crop after crop came out of the earth, the blessing of Demeter. She had a daughter, Persephone of the delicate ankles, and the mother and daughter were always together. They roamed the earth, and Persephone was in charge of the flowers. She would paint the flowers whatever color she chose, and she would give the flowers names. Hades looked up from the underworld and saw Persephone, and she was lovely. He wanted her for his bride. He went to the top of Mount Olympus and asked Zeus if he could marry Persephone. And Zeus said yes. But they did not ask Demeter. They did not ask her if she agreed for her daughter to marry her brother. So Demeter left Persephone alone with some friends, the daughters of the ocean. And Persephone saw a flower that she'd never seen before, a tiny white narcissus. And she bent down to pick it when suddenly the earth began to shake. And there before Persephone the earth split apart, and from the depths of the earth there came a chariot pulled by 4 black horses. And in the chariot was Hades, and he grabbed Persephone about the waist and pulled her into the chariot, and the chariot went back down under the earth. "Mother, mother," screamed Persephone, and the earth closed over without a trace. Demeter went looking for her daughter. "Persephone, where are you? Persephone?" There wasn't a sign of her daughter anywhere. Demeter covered her head with a shawl and took 2 torches and searched the earth for traces of Persephone. She met Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft and the goddess of the crossroads. "Your daughter, I heard her call. I heard her call for her mother, but I did not see what happened to her. Ask Helios, the god of the sun, who sees everything." Called to the sun god, "Helios, did you see my daughter Persephone?" And every day Helios drives his chariot across the sky, pulled by 4 beautiful golden horses, and thus the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And Helios called, Demeter, Demeter of the lovely hair, I saw Hades steal Persephone and take her down beneath the earth. Oh! Demeter was in agony, knowing that her daughter would be imprisoned in the dark underworld. And Demeter's beauty faded. Her golden hair became gray, and her face was old and wrinkled. She was dressed in rags. She roamed the earth. Some people were kind to her and fed her. Some only gave her scraps from their kitchen, and some would drive her from their door. At last Demeter came to the town of Eleusis and sat down beside a well. And 4 girls approached the well. They were the daughters of Seleucus, and each carried on her shoulder a jar to be filled with water. The oldest of the girls was Caladice. Old woman, why are you sitting there at the well? I was stolen by pirates, and I escaped from the pirates, for I did not wish to be sold into slavery. Do you know of any household about here that could use the services of a poor old woman? Yes, said Caladice, our mother just had a baby. At last we have a brother. You could come to our house and take care of the baby. And the 4 daughters of Seleucus led the old woman through the streets to their house. And their mother gave the baby boy to the old woman. When no one was looking, Demeter took the baby and rocked him. You beautiful child, I shall make you immortal. I shall make you as one of the gods. And at night, when everyone was asleep, Demeter took the baby boy and placed him in the fire to burn out all traces of humanity that were within him. But his mother came suddenly on the scene, and she grabbed the baby out of the fire. What are you doing? Why are you burning my son? And the old woman in rags stood before the mother, and she became tall and beautiful once again. And there was Demeter in all her glory. Foolish woman, I would have made your son a god. And she turned and left the house. And the people of the town of Eleusis built a temple for Demeter. And there she sat, mourning for her daughter, the beautiful Persephone of the delicate ankles that was trapped in the underworld. And the crops did not grow. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the earth withered. There were no leaves on the trees. The ground was covered with rocks, and the people on earth were starving. Zeus, they called up, Zeus, save us! And on Mount Olympus, all the gods had noticed that the people were no longer burning sacrifices to them. Zeus viewed the earth. Well, it is clear. Demeter must make the crops grow once again. Iris, go down and tell Demeter she must restore the fertility to the earth. And Iris, the goddess of the rainbow, slid down on the many colors to the temple where Demeter sat. Zeus commands you to make the crops grow. No, Demeter said. not until Persephone is restored to me. When Zeus heard those words, he said, Hades will have to let Persephone go. She must be returned to her mother. Hermes, come here. And the messenger of the gods, with his winged sandals and his winged helmet, flew from Mount Olympus down to the underworld. Hades had placed Persephone on a throne beside him. He had given her many beautiful jewels and gold crowns. But what cared Persephone for jewels? She wanted her flowers. She wanted her mother. She sat day by day and grew paler and paler. Hades offered her all sorts of food and drink to tempt her, but she ate nothing. She drank nothing. Then Hermes appeared before them. Zeus commands that Persephone be restored to her mother. And Persephone was so excited to be going back onto earth, and Hades gave her the fruit called a pomegranate. And in her excitement, she absent-mindedly ate 4 seeds. They tasted wonderful. And Hades watched her eat. And Hermes picked up Persephone and pushed her back up through the earth. And Demeter pulled Persephone out of the ground. And the flowers grew, and the leaves appeared on the trees, and the crops started growing again. And all the people of Eleusis rejoiced to see the reunion of the mother and the daughter. But back on Mount Olympus, Hades appeared before his brother. Zeus, you must give Persephone back to me. You know the rule. No one may eat or drink while they are in the underground and return to earth. And I saw Persephone eat 4 pomegranate seeds. Zeus thought. He looked at Hades. He looked at Persephone. And he looked at Demeter. He knew if he returned Persephone to Hades to dwell forever in the underworld, Demeter would never let the crops grow again. This is my judgment. Persephone must dwell in the underworld with Hades for 4 months of the year, 1 month for each of the pomegranate seeds she ate. And for the rest of the year, she will dwell on earth with her mother. And so it is. Every year, at just about this time, when the leaves fall off the trees and the earth seems dead and there's very little light, Persephone goes down to the underworld, where she is the wife of Hades and the queen, and she sits on her throne for 4 months. And then in the spring, she returns to the earth, and the flowers and the crops bloom again. And she stays there through the harvest, and in the fall she returns. And Demeter rejoices, and Demeter weeps. Now the story of Demeter and Persephone was at the center of a very special religion that took place in ancient Greece. Eleusis was a real town not very far from Athens. And every year, the people would reenact this story of Demeter and Persephone in some way. But if you belonged to this religion, you were to vow never to tell what happened at the ceremonies. So to this day, we're not really sure what they did at the temple of Eleusis. But today, you may have something like this as a centerpiece on your Thanksgiving table, representing a cornucopia. And this was a symbol of plenty and of a bountiful harvest, and it also reminds us of Demeter's gifts to us. In the first story about Demeter and Persephone, I mentioned Helios, the god of the sun, and the Greeks thought that every day he drove his chariot across the sky, and that was how the sun rose and set. There was a boy. His name was Phaeton. His mother was named Clymene, and he did not know who his father was. He said, "Mother, who is my father?" And she said, "Your father is Helios, the god of the sun." And Phaeton was so proud, he told his friends, he said, "You know, my father is Phaeton, the sun god." And his friends said, "He is not." And Phaeton said, "Yes, he is. I will prove it. I will go and see him, and I will drive his chariot across the sky, and then you will believe me." Phaeton walked down a long road. At the end of the road was the palace of the sun. The gates had beautiful carvings on them. The gates had been made by Hephaestus, the god of the forge. And Phaeton walked down a long corridor towards his father's throne. He passed the hours, and he passed the days and the seasons of the year, and there, seated on his throne, was Phaeton, was Helios, Phaeton's father. And the sun god stood up and said, "My son, I'm so glad to see you." He embraced Phaeton and said, "I'll give you anything you want." And Phaeton said, "Father, I wish to drive your chariot across the heavens." "No," said Helios, "anything but that. No one can drive my chariot, not even Zeus himself." "Father, you promised," said Phaeton. So Helios had to let his son drive the chariot. He smeared a special salve over Phaeton's body to keep the fire from burning him. He taught him the secret names of his horses, and he said, "Stay on the path. Stay on the path. Do not go up too high to the heaven, or you will burn the skies. If you go too close to the earth, you will burn the earth. Keep the horses on the path." And Phaeton stood in the chariot, holding the reins. The hours held the horses down, ready for the signal to be given for the sun to rise. The sky was night and dark, and the stars faded. And Aurora, the goddess of the dawn, spread a rosy light over the sky. And the servants let the horses go, and they began to run along the road. They ran as fast as the wind, and Phaeton held on as tightly as he could, but the horses soon noticed that it was not the strong hands of Helios on the reins, but weak, uncertain hands, and they began to veer up and down all over the road. They went up high and burned the skies, and they dipped down low and began to burn the earth. And Phaeton looked down and saw Egypt, where he lived, and he could see his mother, he could see his friends, but the chariot kept burning more and more of Africa, and that is why today there is a great desert in Africa, and the people on the earth called up, "Zeus, save us! The earth will burn up!" Zeus had no choice. He took a thunderbolt and threw it at Phaeton, and Phaeton tumbled down out of the sky into the ocean. And for the rest of the day, there was no sun. The next day, Helios, the sun god, had gathered his horses and his chariot once again to their starting place. But as they began their journey across the heavens, he held the reins only with one hand. With the other hand, he wiped away his tears for his son that he would never see again. And dolphins brought the body of Phaeton to his mother Clymene and his sisters, and they buried the boy Phaeton. And his sisters cried and cried until they turned into poplar trees, trees that have sap that oozes amber. And if you see the jewel amber and hold it up to the light of the sun will be trapped to remind you of the story of Phaeton. Now sometimes the gods would come down on earth and visit people and see how they were behaving. And this is a story from the Roman poet Ovid. So I will be using all of the Roman names of the gods and goddesses. One day, Jupiter, that's the Roman name for Zeus, decided to see if people knew how to be friendly and courteous to strangers. So he invited Mercury, that's Hermes in the Greek name, to go on a little visit on Earth. And they disguised themselves as travelers, and they went from house to house. And no one would take them in. No one offered them any bit of hospitality. Finally, they came to an old, run-down house. There lived an old woman, Baucis, and her husband, Philemon. These two old people said, come in, we're very poor, but you can share whatever food we have. And Jupiter and Mercury sat down on a rustic bench, and the two old people spread dates and figs and nuts out before them, and they poured wine into rustic wooden goblets, and they drank and drank, and the pitcher of wine was never empty. It miraculously kept refilling. "Oh, good gentlemen," old Baucis said, "would you like some more to eat? I could kill our goose if I could catch her." And she tried to run after the goose to catch the bird to serve up a nice dinner. "No, no, old woman," said Jupiter, "we have seen enough." And they stood up and revealed themselves as the gods they were. They took the old couple outside. "You were the only people who were kind to us." And as Baucis and Philemon watched, the whole valley was turned into a lake, and all their inhospitable neighbors were drowned. But their poor house became a beautiful temple. "We would like you two people to take care of our temple," said Jupiter. "Is there anything else we can give you as a reward?" And Baucis and Philemon whispered to one another, and Philemon said, "Yes, we wish to die at the same time, so neither one has to bury the other." And they took care of the temple for many years. And at last, they looked at each other, and they saw bark growing up over their legs, and leaves covering their face. And one turned into an oak tree, and the other into a linden, and both trees grew out of a single trunk. And that's a story of a reward that the gods gave to kind people. But the gods were not always kind when people did not behave as they should. There was a man, an evil, cruel man. His name was Persephone. Persephone, wicked, wild, violator of the good, the beautiful. There was a grove of trees. It was sacred to Ceres, the goddess of the harvest. She was the same as Demeter. And in the middle of the trees, there was a great, huge oak tree, beloved of the goddess. But Persephone wanted that tree cut down. He ordered his servants to take axes and hack away at the tree. And at each blow, the tree cried out, "No!" And the servants refused to chop anymore. And Persephone himself grabbed an axe and began to chop at the tree, and blood dripped out of the bark. And one of his servants tried to stop him, and Persephone took his axe and beheaded the man. And from within the tree cried out a spirit, a dryad, "Oh, Mother Ceres, punish this evil man for killing me." And when the tree had toppled over, all the wood dryads went to see Ceres, and they were dressed in black, in mourning. Punish Erysichthon. Ceres, the lady of the green, will not forgive your destruction of her giant oak. Her punishment, hunger, continual starvation. Erysichthon, wicked man, hunger will come. And Ceres said to one of her nymphs, go. I, the goddess of plenty, may not visit the place where hunger dwells. Fly in my chariot to Scythia and tell hunger to punish Erysichthon. And the nymph climbed into the chariot of Ceres, and the dragons flew off over the land until they came to Scythia, where hunger lives. On nothing but rocks was the land, and hunger was an old, bony woman. Her arms were thin, her joints were swollen, her cheeks were sunken, her belly was concave. And from a distance, the nymph said, visit Erysichthon and punish him. And in the night, while Erysichthon was sleeping, hunger came to him and entered his body, entered his veins, and he began to dream of food. He chomped on nothing, and hunger left. And Erysichthon woke up, starving. He ordered a meal. He ate it all. He was still ravenous. He ordered another great banquet. He ate that. He did nothing, hour after hour, but eat huge quantities of food, but he was never full. He wasted all his money. He had nothing left but his daughter, Mestra. He sold her for money. He sold her to a sea captain. But Mestra could change her shape. And on the beach with the sea captain, she changed herself into a fisherman mending his nets. The sea captain looked about. Where is that girl I just bought? She was right here. See her footsteps stop in the sand. Where did she go? There was no one here but me, said the fisherman. And he went back to Erysichthon, and day after day the father sold the daughter, and the daughter kept changing her shape and returned, but finally not even that brought enough money for Erysichthon's unending appetite, and he began to eat his body. And he ate and ate himself until death at last came to him. And that is the story of Erysichthon, the starving man who ate himself.